What is a multiverse? A multiverse is a completely independent timeline that exists parallel to your main story. And unlike alternate timelines that branch off from specific moments in your main story, multiverses are entirely separate story worlds. They give you the freedom to tell radically different versions of your story from the ground up. In the scope of your multiverses, you can create up to 10 different multiverses for your story, giving you plenty of room to explore various what-if scenarios. It's worth noting, though, that you can't have both multiverses and alternate timelines in the same story. You'll need to choose one approach or the other. Each multiverse you create will use the same calendar system as your main timeline, whether that's real-world dates or your custom fantasy calendar you created. Each multiverse you create gets its own card in the interface. These cards are like windows into your different story worlds, showing you the title and description you created, what type of calendar it uses, and how many events you've created in that universe. When you want to dive deeper into a particular multiverse, just click the Open Multiverse button on its card. When you open a multiverse, you'll find two main tabs that help you manage your events. The first tab, Multiverse Events, is where you'll find all the events that exist only in this version of your story. These are unique to this reality and can be completely different from anything in your main timeline. The second tab, Main Timeline Events, shows you all the events from your main story. This is particularly useful when you want to create parallel versions of existing events. You can select any event from your main timeline and create a multiverse version of it, then modify it to fit this new reality. So what does all of this really actually mean? Well, to understand how multiverses work in the app, you have to understand how events work. As mentioned in previous videos, events are one of the backbone features for creating your story. Events are the building blocks of your story. You can think of them like scenes that can be more granular in scope if necessary. I go into more detail in the events walkthrough video, so I'm going to keep this brief about events. A single event can represent one minor action or a multitude of major actions. These events can then be added to your chapters in an effort to better construct your story. With regard to multiverses, Multiverse just takes these regular events and make them multiverse events. They're more or less the exact same structure. However, from the user's viewpoint, you can now distinguish what sort of things happen between the different multiverse without losing a linear focus of your story. I know this sounds somewhat confusing, but for anyone who's ever tried writing a story that involved multiple realities, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Now let's walk through how to create your first multiverse. Start by heading to the Multiverse section in your workspace. You'll see your main timeline at the top of the screen. This is your reference point, but remember, your multiverse doesn't have to follow its path. When you're ready to create a new multiverse, just click the Create Multiverse button. You'll be asked to give your multiverse a title and write a description. Make these meaningful. Explain how this universe differs from your main story. Just think about what makes this version unique and exciting. The system will automatically use the same type of calendar as your main timeline, so you don't need to worry about date formatting. When you open a multiverse, you'll find two main tabs that help you manage your events. The first tab, Multiverse Events, is where you'll find all the events that exist only in this version of your story. These are unique to this reality and can be completely different from anything in your main timeline. The second tab, Main Timeline Events, shows you all the events from your main story. This is particularly useful when you want to create parallel versions of existing events. You can select any event from your main timeline and create a multiverse version of it, then modify it to fit this new reality. You have two ways to build your multiverse's story. First, you can create completely new events that only exist in this universe. These don't need any connection to your main timeline. They're free to be entirely unique to this reality. Alternatively, you can take events from your main timeline and reimagine them for your multiverse. This is perfect when you want to explore how a familiar event might play out differently under different circumstances. You can select any event from your main timeline, create a multiverse version, and then modify it to fit this new reality. Managing your multiverse is pretty straightforward with the built-in settings. Click the gear icon to access settings where you can edit the multiverse's title, update its description, or even delete it if needed. For each event in your multiverse, you can edit all the details, add characters and locations, set dates, and use categories and tags to keep everything organized. Important things you should remember when working with multiverses is that deleting a multiverse will permanently remove all its events. There's no going back. So if you want to keep the multiverse event, first remove the event from the multiverse so it'll go back to a regular event. However, don't worry about messing up your main timeline. Changes in a multiverse stay in that multiverse. You can have multiple parallel stories running simultaneously, and each multiverse can tell a completely different version of your story. So making the most of your multiverses, give each multiverse a clear purpose or theme. Use descriptive titles that highlight what makes each universe different. As you develop multiple multiverses, think about how events might parallel or contrast with each other across different realities. Keep track of what stays the same across all versions and what changes. This can lead to fascinating insights about your story's core elements. Remember, multiverses are your playground for imagination.